I'm Dr. Akeranda Smith. I'm a life coach, professor, and a thought leader. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Ike, and it's June, so happy Pride Month. I would be remiss if I didn't pay respect to something that was very much a part of my identity. I am unapologetically Black and queer, so I thought it would be befitting to kick off the first week of June by telling you about my coming out story. So for so many LGBTQIA plus individuals, we come out multiple times in our life. We have an initial coming out, but then we often have to come out multiple times just because we live in a patriarchal society. And for us, it's never just one coming out. It's coming out multiple times, depending on the situation, the space, and the environment. So my initial coming out happened when I was a senior in high school. So before I go into that story, you're going to love this. Go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button and get your blanket and your favorite cup of whatever because you're going to enjoy this story. So I came from an ultra religious family. So I wasn't really allowed to explore my identity and the fluidity of it, which is very important for any young child. But I always knew that I had an affinity for women. I thought they were beautiful. I was attracted to them. I knew that early on in life. But I had nothing that I could do with that feeling but suppress it because my environment didn't lend for exploration. So when I was a senior and I was on a work study program, I worked for a car dealership. And I met a young lady who used to sell cars there, and we hit it off and became fast friends. Eventually, she left, and we exchanged numbers, and we kept in touch. So after work, sometimes I would go by and visit her. And I never shall forget the first time I came to her house. She was upstairs. She was upstairs in her townhome, and she lived with her sister. And her sister came to the door. She was beautiful, and she let me in, and my friend came downstairs and she immediately introduced me to her partner. So that was her coming out to me because other than that, I didn't know that she was queer if she was, right? So she came out to me and I was like, oh, okay. I immediately felt safe because I knew in this environment I was now going to be able to explore what I had always felt but didn't have the language for it. So we all began to hang out. And I found this to be my new routine. I would go to work and then leave and go hang out at her house and then eventually go home later on in the afternoon. And so one day, after we had all just been hanging out for a while, me, my friend, her partner, and her sister, I was at work one day and my friend's sister called me and she told me that she liked me and that she would like to explore. Now, that was her first time coming out to me because as far as I was concerned, she was straight. I had no reason to think anything wiser. And I liked her too. I'm not even going to hold you. So that day, I went by after work and we hung out again. And she immediately approached me and kissed me. I was in heaven. Because you got to understand, for a young child like me, a young adult rather, a young teenager coming of age, this was so instrumental to who I am today because I needed that opportunity to be forged for me by my mother. She didn't have the courage to do that. My mom was extremely homophobic, very intolerant, and ultra religious. And so I knew emphatically that that was not going to be tolerated if she got wind of it. So, of course, like most children, you hide because I'm not going to give up something that I am enjoying just because you don't like it. I'm going to double down on it even more. So I did. So, long story short, this young lady came. I started dating my friend's sister. And I never shall forget one day when she came to my house and she bought me flowers, and my mom was just kind of observing the interaction. So after she left, my mom said, "I think she likes you." And I was like, "No, she doesn't." I knew she did. We were together, for God's sakes. But my mom didn't leave space for me to be truthful, so I lied. And so I was like, "Oh, I don't think so. I just think she's friendly." So fast forward, that relationship eventually resolved because at the time, the girl that I was dating, she was a little older and she ended up moving. But I kept exploring and I ended up having another relationship with a girl. And so this is when I came out to my mother. So I was in this relationship dating this young woman, and we had got into a disagreement. She came to my house because she wanted to finish the conversation, right? Because you got to realize the woman that I was dating, she was out. I wasn't. I was still hiding. And we were both around the same age, but she was masculine presenting. Her family had already accepted her. My family hadn't. So when I look back now, hindsight is 2020. One of the reasons that I believe that my girlfriend at the time was frustrated was because she couldn't love me in a way that allowed us to be free. I was always hiding. I had to go home at a certain time. She couldn't. We couldn't have open conversations at my house. I had to be very discreet about the conversations that I had, and we only met outside. She couldn't come over to my house, but I could go over to her. So it was a lot of red tape. And a lot of people, when they are already out, they don't necessarily want to deal with that, even though they may love you. So we got into an argument. I don't think the argument was about that, but it was kind of layered with a little bit of that. And so she showed up at my house unannounced, not to be rude, but because she cared about me and she wanted to continue the conversation. And I was running and hiding, not from her, but from having to deal with my own fear of not being accepted by my mom. So we got into this heated conversation. My mom is looking at me, looking at her, looking at each other. And my mom interrupts and she's like, "What is going on?" In other words, why are you two women so passionate about one another, right? You're just friends. Like, that's what my mom was thinking. And so at this point, I'm frustrated of hiding and lying and contorting myself to be something that I wasn't. And I looked at my mom and I said, "I'm gay." And I turned back around and kept interacting with my girlfriend at the time. My mom, you could tell by the look on her face that she was disappointed. She was angry, but she was just like, okay. So she turned around, left us to continue to, you know, deal with our own stuff. We finally worked it out. She left, she went home. And then my mom came out and came into my room that night and she said, "You know, you can't be gay in my house." And I was like, I knew that. And so she really gave me no other choice. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, I went and got my own place. I got me an apartment. And it was interesting because me and my mom fought about it, because when I told my mom I got my own apartment, she was angry. But I knew that my mom was angry at a lot of things. I knew that she was angry at the fact that I was not turning out to be the person that she thought I was. And more importantly, I wasn't following her path like she had followed the path that her mother wanted her to follow. So I was a disappointment to her. Fine. I decided to get my own apartment. And it's interesting, when I got it, I only had enough money for the deposit. But true to who my mom is, even though she didn't want to let me go, she did. And she ended up paying my first month's rent. And so that was my way of stepping out on my own and beginning to explore the identity that I would have loved to explore in the safety of a home with my mom, who was courageous enough to, even if she didn't know what it meant, to give me the space to explore what I could see what it meant for me. When your parents don't accept you as a child, they ultimately give up their rights to have a relationship with you, whether they know it or not. And my mom, she gave up her rights to have a relationship with me way before she even knew she did. And granted, my mom today isn't homophobic and she has since worked through all of her issues surrounding her relationship with her religion and her ideals and her beliefs. It definitely took a lot of years of our life that we lost because she couldn't accept that who I was had nothing to do with her. And it had everything to do with just who I was as an individual, because sometimes parents take things personally when their children come out to them. They feel like it's something they did, like it was like their choices or the decisions they made now created some kind of pixie dust, and they projected our identity off on us, and that is what made us now identify as anything other than straight. And that's not the case. Some things are just who you are. And I needed to be able to find out who I was without all the noise of my mom and my family dictating to me what they thought that meant for me. So it served me well. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, because even after I came out, I ended up going back into the closet, right? That's another story for another day. And I ended up marrying my kid's father. And I'm grateful for my kids. I wouldn't take anything in the world for them. But like I initially started off this video saying, people that identify as LGBTQIA plus, we come out multiple times. So even as I went into the closet, I came back out and I stayed. And so here I am, officially, unapologetically Black and queer and married to my beautiful wife, and very grateful for the life that I'm living. Now that I've shared my initial coming out story, tell me yours. What was your coming out? Was it safe? Was it scary? Did you have a really tough time coming out? Was you immediately embraced? I would love to hear your story. Thank you for watching. And as always, see you next week.